Welcome all. Thank you all for joining us today. So who are we? Who is Unidos? Unidos is a multi-chapter collaboration creating a space to empower and celebrate the lives, work, stories, and needs of creatives within a Latinx and Hispanic cultural heritage. As mentioned, we are a multi-chapter collaboration. We currently have over 13 chapters supporting Unidos. And we also want to thank one of our sponsors, Typecraft, for providing some sponsorship. And specifically for today's event, I want to give a shout out to the four sponsors, the four chapters that came together to make this happen. We were able to source activists from across the country thanks to the help of having 4 different chapters across the country to join together. I believe we are the largest collaboration of Hispanic Heritage Talks this year. So big props for all 4 of us to making this happen. And, you know, we're all a family here. We all here together. So even though we are, you know, Hispanic Heritage or Latinx, really this content is for everybody to enjoy and learn and engage with. So welcome to our activist panel. Today we'll be discussing the role that creative professionals play as activists. For me, activism has always been a very creative outlet. You know, being of Chicano heritage, I grew up around seeing Chicano art. And I never understood the connection of activism that had within it. And if you look at the activism that is within Latinx heritage from all across the country of all different backgrounds, that activism always has amazing creative expression that goes beyond just, you know, marches and protests, but goes into businesses, art ideas, theater, and everything else. So today, we are glad to bring you 3 panelists to talk about that crossover of being a creative professional and being an activist. So I would like to bring in and introduce Natacha. She is our moderator for today.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, how you guys doing? Thank you, Edwin. I'm very happy to be moderating this panel today. So as Edwin said, my name is Natacha Poggio. I am from AIGA Houston. I'm the Design for Good chair this year. I'm also assistant professor of graphic design at the University of Houston downtown. And I'm also the founder and director of Design Global Change, which is a creative collaborative of designers making positive change in the world. Let's introduce our next slide. Okay, so we have 3 amazing panelists today. I'm very excited because they come from different disciplines. So Costanza Segovia, she is the owner of Veil Design, which is a visual note-taking practice, and she's super talented. A bilingual designer. She's a fellow Argentinian like me, so Argentina, woohoo. She focused on visual communication as a tool to address issues of equity, social justice, and access to the arts. Her work is on movement work for immigrant rights. She helped start the Hartford Deportation Defense Collective and serves on statewide committees with the Connecticut Bail Fund, the Connecticut Immigrant Rights Alliance, and New Heavens Universal Representation Pilot Project. That's a mouthful. Constanza is was born and raised in Mendoza and moved to the US at the age of 17. And lucky moved because I had the pleasure of getting to know Constanza as a student at the University of Hartford, where I used to teach many years ago. So I interacted with Constanza a lot, and I'm very proud of her achievements. Constanza lives in Hartford, Connecticut with her husband, 2 stepkids, 1 baby daughter who is adorable, a dog, and a bunny. Thank you, Constanza, for joining us today.
Thank you.
So now our next panelist, Jocelyne Riojas. She's a Mexican-American visual designer, illustrator, and artist born in Piedras Negras, Coahuila, and raised across the border in Eagle Pass, Texas. So she was influenced by her parents growing up, and they were immigrant workers, now serving as attorneys, helping farm workers and asylum seekers. So passionate about empowering her community by creating a voice for people of color, Jocelyne uses her graphic design work and illustrations to inspire and prompt a new generation of activism. When she's not working in social impact, she works as an independent designer, known for her vibrant color palettes and passion for putting her clients' stories into her designs. She walks them through the creative process to assure their brands represent their mission. She has built a career in public speaking, gained media recognition for her community work. You guys should check her TEDx talk. It's pretty cool. And she currently resides in Austin, Texas, and is pursuing a Master of Fine Arts in Communication Design at Texas State University. Welcome, Jocelyne.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Zaid Consuegra Sauza. In his bio, he lists undocumented and unafraid, which I really love. He's a plant-based chef, was born in Mexico City, Mexico. He's an entrepreneur and at his core, and he has a passion for climate change, human, immigrant, and animal rights activism. Welcome, Zaid.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys all for joining. I'm going to go ahead and roll my video off and let you guys get to it. So thank you all. Enjoy the panel.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to welcome everyone in the audience. So many names, participants. We're going to have a Q&A, which is that little button that says Q&A. So that's where we will collect your questions. Please, whoever has questions, just start putting them there. We will go over that. I'll have already prepared some questions for our panelists. So I'll start with that first. And this is for everyone, please, whoever wants to start first, and then I pass it on to the next one. So I want to find a little bit more about your background and inspiration and a day in the life of you as a creative activist. So could you please tell us a bit about yourself, something that we will not know from reading your bio? Everyone shares stuff in the bio, right? But there's things that we don't share, but we still like doing activism in our own ways. So we have the big title, whatever roles we serve as a creative professional, but what are the things that you see that is not appear in the bio, but you are an activist in that way?
Well, for me, I use communication design to create these strategies for campaigns just to communicate messages of what are happening, what is currently happening with the community, whether it's climate change affecting neighborhoods of communities of color and how, school buses affect, the breathing of children, or immigration rights is my main focus, especially because of my parents. As you read in my bio, I grew up with them, and a lot of people don't know is I grew up skipping school a lot because my mother, having to play that gender role, she would always have to take me out of school so she can go meet up with her clients and knock at their doors and always fix their paperwork. And now today, I just kind of take all those things I learned growing up with my parents about how to communicate with these people, and within my own family too, because we're all mixed. Some of us have citizenship, some of us don't, and it's just having to learn how to reach a community and tell them, why these policies matter and these social issues and how we can change, because we can't wait for other people to do it for ourselves.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll go. Well, I also focus my activism in immigrant rights and decarceration and abolition work. I personally was overstayed my visa, so I was, I had papers for a minute and then I didn't for a long time, and then I got married really young to get my papers, so that has really affected my story and my life. And when I met Natacha, I had just gotten married to be able to go to school, and that's how I became a designer. So designer has always been a secondary thing, but I was always artistic. And when I came to design in school, I was already older and had been working in restaurants for a long time. So yeah, I felt as soon as I had the privilege of having citizenship or my residency even, I started getting more involved with activist groups. And then now that I own my own business, I really center that work. And I kind of split my time half and half now with organizing and design.
Great. How about you, Zaid?
Well, thank you for having me, and I love hearing those two stories. I'm obviously undocumented. I have DACA, and it wasn't until probably 2 years after I had DACA that I started working on my activist work. for the most part, I was really scared because I didn't know. I was in the shadows. It was really hard for me. I mean, I've been living here 22 years, and 19 or 18 or so years I was living undocumented. So you have to, you know, for people who don't know, you have to add all those years into this pressure bubble and carry it around. So I lost a lot of friendships when I came out, and I was like, hey, I'm sorry I'm documented. I actually had a Russian friend who asked me to marry them while I was in college. And it was probably the hardest thing, to lie so much about it and then just to like ignore it, because you would tell me, oh, well, like, you're from here, you should give me, you know, a chance to, you know, stay here and blah, blah, blah. And it would just eat me inside that I was so much worse because this person had at least the right to work. And it just ate me up that she had so much more privilege. And then everyone else who was around me, you know, was a citizen or was, you know, wealthy enough to not have that be an issue. So I've grown up in the immigrant community all my life. And this is why I do it, because I didn't have someone to tell me what to do and to guide me. So I feel like it's up to me to tell those who are still in the shadow that it is okay, that there is like a group of us, that we are strong, that we are fighting for everybody. And when I say I'm documented and unafraid, that's a true lie. Like I am 100% afraid. But it's a saying that we have to repeat to ourselves in order to lose fear, especially when we were at the at SCOTUS, which is the Supreme Court of America. You know, when there were cops surrounding us, every time we went into Congress, I had to repeat to myself that I was unafraid, because I was truly afraid. I didn't know if I was going to get arrested, even though they have told us what happens when you get arrested and that they're there for you. It's still a very scary thought, because I've always avoided police for that reason. Even to this day with DACA, I am afraid to get stopped by a police officer. I do not call the cops within my neighborhood, and I live in a low-income neighborhood, so there's crime, there's drugs, and I just refuse to really interact with cops, because you never know how that interaction might be. So that's mainly why I do what I do, is just to make sure I encourage others to follow footsteps so we can get to a place where we can demand things.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's a very powerful story. And, you know, I think we all identified here because we are all immigrants. So the next question, and I posted also in the chat, so you guys don't forget. We all have someone who has been influential in our creative and professional development. Who was your role model for the work you do?
This is such a hard question.
I always have hard questions, don't I, Constanza?
I don't remember.
I mean, I can start if you like.
Yes.
Please.
For me, was my mother. She's a single mother of 4, you know, undocumented. Actually, not anymore. She thankfully was able to get her citizenship, last year, which was awesome. It was amazing. She's right now in Mexico, vacationing. And vacationing, I mean, like, with family. She's not taking it, she's like wants to be with her family. But I seen how hard this woman has worked to get us. I'm actually randomly, I had to stop at a Starbucks, which it's in the spot where she created one of the little Mexican stores that she built and that we had throughout my youth. So I'm just sitting in that same plaza that I was here, you know, 10, 15 years ago. So that's what pushed me, because I remember instead of being at home, I used to go to this pizza buffet where she worked, and I stayed. That was my elementary. After elementary school, I would just go and sit in one of the booths and wait until she was, you know, ready to go home. So I had that life. I grew up within the quote unquote stereotypical immigrant life or undocumented life. And she's the one that pushed me to be better, even though she knew that I was going to have a hard time to get there. She pushed and just, you know, told me that I could be anything. And I followed that throughout my life, because I've been told that and I say this publicly in all my interviews, I've been told that I won't ever get to be somebody since I was in the 7th grade. And every year after that, everyone told me that I couldn't do this because I was bad at school. And I wasn't bad at school, I was just bad at taking tests. I ended up in college, and college is when I realized that I was very smart, even though everyone had told me that I was really dumb throughout my schooling years. And that's just the prejudice and racism that you get here in the Midwest. And it wasn't much that like I was really dumb. It's just that they saw me and they saw me as different. So therefore, why would we try to help this person believe that they can be somebody else that they can't, obviously, because they're not white, they're brown. And I didn't realize that until I was grown. But yeah, I do it for her. That was my most influential person, because she thrived and put us through school. And by school, I'm like the first one to graduate from college. So she didn't put everyone through school, but I was able and privileged enough to get a associate's degree. I wasn't able to get a bachelor's because we couldn't afford it, but at least I have an associate's, and it helped me to make myself and push me to where I am right now. So yeah, I give everything up to that woman, because without her, you know, without the struggles that I've seen her go through, I don't think I would keep going with such a hard style of life here in the US.
Thank you, Zaid. So, Yocelyn or Constanza?
Oh, I'll go ahead and go. That was a beautiful story. For me, it was a little different. I didn't really have that support, especially growing up on the border. There's not a lot of expectations for us to progress or do better. My parents worked as migrant workers. They worked in the fields, but somehow they both went to school and they became attorneys. But that was more to, you know, uplift our community, give back, but also, you know, leave poverty and help my family progress into better. As for me, it was more like, okay, you need to go to school and find stability. And I think that's what a lot of people here, especially if you come from like the immigrant mindset, it's always like, we're always chasing stability and finding ways to survive. So wanting to go into a creative career wasn't always like the best choice, I guess, for me, or what people assume. And even in school, it's just like, why do you want to go into such creative work or art? It's like, like, first of all, like in the media, it's like, how do we even see ourselves represented? It's always, you know, illegals, criminals, and other things. And going into art, it's like, how, like, who's going to even pay you to tell different stories of how the Latino community looks like? I had to find my own path, especially in my career. I had to build it on my own. For me, it just started out with, you know, I'm homesick. I'm living in the city. I keep traveling. I keep having to work. But even within protests and organizing and activism, it was still rare to see messages that highlighted positivity versus anger towards these issues. And slowly, when I just started sharing that work and, you know, sharing these stories and highlighting the Latino community as a positive thing in our issues of, you know, fighting towards advocacy and betterment, I found that many people within the community were seeking that type of positivity. It's like, tell me that I can make change and I can embrace it, rather than me being angry every day for my situation.
Thank you. Constanza?
Yeah, I had a lot of similar to what Jocelyne was saying. I always felt like there was some you know, like I should be doing something more stable, more secure, clear career path. I was actually like kind of good at taking tests in school. So like and I totally agree that like being good at school has nothing to do with being smart or not, but it's like you're good at school. That's it. Like, but yeah, so like because I had good grades, like I think people in my family expected me to do, you know, other things. And I was like, I moved here and I had like no friends. And I was like, screw everything. I'm going to do whatever I want. So I started painting and eventually became a designer. It's hard to pick like a mentor or like a figure that I admire. I think through the years it's changed. Right now, I would say like there's an American organizer and writer called Grace Lee Boggs that is like Chinese American, or was, and she was based in Detroit and did a lot of writing and work about like the intersection of creativity and activism and organizing, and the idea of like hope, and radical imagination and that kind of stuff like is goals. Like I love it so much. So I'm gonna throw her name out there.
So she serves as inspiration for the work that you do now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, everyone will have different mentors, and as you move, you know, through life stages, and obviously our families have a big impact, right, in our lives, and then school, and then, you know, moving into the profession. So I have a question. My next question is, and some of you have actually touched on this, like when this passion for activism started. So what kind of obstacles did you encounter and how did you overcome them? So I know that, you know, there's like this influence of the design and the visual communication that Jocelyne was talking about. And I wonder, you started like this passion, and then how do you overcome the challenges that I'm sure you run into many challenges, and the same thing for everyone else?
I think the challenges is just finding a way to convey those messages that we're trying to portray to motivate the community towards advocacy. And then there's always like the limitations of what tools do I have access to? What you know, supplies can I use? Am I creating a digital campaign? Am I creating something physical? Are we creating posters? And it's one thing to be a designer, but it's like, how do we collaborate with the community itself? And how do we bring people into it? So that way they feel like they're adding towards this mission of change. And one of those things was just kind of learning to, you know, use what I have. I learned how to build banners and images with a projector, and people just feel, you know, like they're a part of something if they can like join you and build it. And we did that recently with a giant image with a corazon, with a heart, with the message "Mi lucha es tu lucha," and now I take that everywhere, and people enjoy, you know, being able to hold that because it just shares a message that they can connect to. Or, you know, it's like, what about sculptures? It's like, how do we connect, especially with social media? It's a way of taking advantage of how to build that communication strategy, and, you know, just letting people know there's different ways to organize. You don't always have to be there in person, especially during the pandemic. And I know like a lot of the times we can feel, you know, useless or, you know, unproductive or proactive, but there's different ways, just letting people know they can share, donate, or take action even by just signing a petition. Other obstacles is just, you know, there's the simple things of just people, even within the community and outside, that, you know, there's a sense of ignorance, having to educate them and, you know, remind them about what the facts are and how to, you know, just state that visually, or, you know, even communicate it there in person, because sometimes people don't want to hear the message you have to say, or why, you know, immigration reform is an issue we should be discussing, and how it affects, you know, the finances here in the States, and how the detention centers, you know, are rising in numbers with COVID, and how we need to get people out, and not because everybody's a criminal. It's like, no, how do we communicate that? Let's have a discussion, or just find a way where we can have an even platform and share each other's opinions.
That's a great point about the detention centers. So Constanza or say.
Yeah, for me, the biggest challenge has been getting paid. Like, straight up, like, I mean, it's like if you want to work with activist organization, nobody has money, and like, never mind, you know, prioritizing design as something to spend money on, it's just very hard to do. So that continues to be a challenge. I think I found other ways, like, you know, I think I've evolved my work to do more participatory stuff. So it could be more like community building, kind of like what Jocelyne was saying. It's like if you do a mural with people versus just getting paid to do a mural kind of thing, you know, or you do like public education, teach-ins, and then like there's a design component to it, or doing like a bunch of work for an organization, kind of, you know, I feel like that's, yeah, it's always a challenge. And to me, it's really important to not do work for free and not to like devalue our work and our profession. So that's always kind of like a big conversation. And, you know, going back to the beginning, the intro, you know, like art and design has always been such a central part of activism and propaganda, and it's actually a key element. You know, if you think of any big social movements, there's always imagery that goes along with it that like really made something click for people. You know, whether it's like slogans or images. So it's I think it is very important for us to do that work of helping people through like the value of it, but it's always not clear. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Zaid, you mentioned obstacles and you've been overcoming them. You're still in mute, by the way.
There we go. Sorry, I was laughing by myself there for a second. No, this is amazing. I love that, you know, I get to hear this and I get to be a part of these things so often, because one of the struggles of mine is I'm very good at doing things when people tell me to do. So I'm not a good yeller. My voice is very low. So within like minutes of chanting and going out, that's it. Like I'm done. So people are always like, hey, do you want to go to a chant? You want to go to, and I'm just like, no. Like I'll go and stand and then just kind of like mimic what you're saying, because my voice will go out really quick. The other thing is, yeah, getting paid. I have a lot of people saying like, well, like you're everywhere. Like I have done a lot of news throughout like national news, and it's like, well, I don't get paid for them. Like I wish if I had at least $10 every time I did an interview, then I'd maybe be making some money. But yeah, activism isn't glamorous. I mean, every time I've been to Washington, D.C., and I've told this to a friend, I just did another interview with somebody from Washington, D.C., and I was like, hey, I've been there several times. And one time did I get to spend a little bit of tourism, and it was like 2 hours within the same building. And that was it. That's all I've seen. All I've seen is federal buildings, the inside of federal buildings. And then one time somebody took me out on a really cold night, and it was like midnight, and that's what I got to see of Washington, D.C. So like, yeah, it's not pretty, and you don't get paid for it. So we do it because we believe in what we're doing, or at least in what this organization is doing. So every time United We Dream calls me and says, hey, do you want to do an interview for us? I'm like, yes, sure. What do I say? Because I believe in like what they're going for. And also it affects me personally a lot. So I'm not really great at it. Like I'm really great if someone tells me what to do and what to say, and I'm like, yes, I can do that. But by myself, you need a group, and that's what I've learned. You need a group, and once you get, you know, hundreds of people right behind you, it's so much easier to know that you're not alone, that you're not, you know, suffering through this struggle by yourself. And it's also beautiful to know that my story is not unique in any way, shape, or form. My story is told 1,000 times. And it's good because it makes me feel normal, and it's bad because it's told 1,000 times. And we need to fix this. Whether it be immigration, whether it be incarceration, whether it be animal rights, we need to fix all these things. I hope people know that it's not glamorous. We do this because it needs to be done, and we need more people to join.
Yeah, so you said it very, very beautifully. It's true. It's like, and also we appreciate as the AIGA Unidos, we appreciate that you're here. Especially, you say you're not a designer, but you're still a creative with what you do with your restaurant and the activism. And I also believe that food is a way of design in a different format. So
it is. I mean, I love it. I started to be an artist, but as an immigrant, undocumented person, it didn't seem like art was going to be a way to get by. And also, I did go into film and television, and Hollywood shut the doors on me because at that time I didn't have any DACA, so I could not get a job in Hollywood, and I lost it. I lost my hope to be in the entertainment. So this is what I got. I found another gift of mine, which is food, and I'm running with it.
This is a great segue for my next question, which is about making a difference and making a living. And Constanza mentioned about not being paid. So can you tell us how your creative profession crosses over with activism? So, like part of the introduction that I shared what you guys do, but like, can you tell us a little bit more? Like Zaid, you were talking about the restaurant, right? So tell us a little bit more how you make the activism within the restaurant business.
Well, it just landed. Like it created itself from me getting DACA, and then from me going plant-based, and still within the immigrant community. It just started to become its own thing. I didn't actually try to do anything. It just fell into place, which is beautiful. Because within the food, I can start talking about how it's better to eat less animal products, not only for ourselves, but for the environment and for the people who are within these slaughterhouses. I used to be a butcher, and I know a lot of butchers, and they not one of them ever said that they loved killing animals. And 100% of the ones I know were immigrants, undocumented immigrants, that were paid a not livable wage, that would have to, cut animals and be stepping on, inches of blood throughout their days. They would have to have rain boots in order to be within those factories. And now we're seeing that you have a lot of COVID cases within these factories as well. So I get to talk about how it's better to switch over to a plant-based diet, and also talk about why and how it affects the immigrant community, and how we can, I don't know, be healthier, because obviously, like, the immigrant community makes less money. I can't even afford health insurance. So therefore, I have to be twice as careful of how I eat, because I don't want to be sick. I can't afford to get sick. It's not even that I don't want to get sick. I just can't afford it. And I know a ton of the immigrant community can't either. We can't afford to go to the hospitals. So why not, change something that some people might call drastic, but even if I can get them to switch one meal, a week, I can start with that. And if I can teach them how to switch to 2 meals, 3 meals, even if I don't get them for the whole week, I can get them to a healthier lifestyle. But that's how I cross, at least my activism with the food. I try to make great things that will cater to a wide variety of people. And I also include spices and relative Latinx flavors that will bring that community in. And, thankfully, we've gotten so many groups of people, and it used to be a beautiful thing when we were open to see so much diversity within the bar that we built. I mean, you would see Latinx people, you see white people, you see Black people, you see Asian people within that same hour, just eating along. It was one of the most beautiful things that I got to see on a daily basis. Right now, we don't see as much for obvious reasons, but it pushes me to keep on going with what we're doing.
Thank you, Zaid. Jocelyn or Constanza, how do you cross over with activism in your profession?
I guess for me, things are a little different. I know people are talking about the struggle of money, but I feel like my parents instilled that immigrant work ethic in me, where it's just like, I'm just a natural hustler and I'm just always trying to figure out, you know, how am I going to survive and how am I paying my next bills? Through my art, you know, I started through social media. That's where I started sharing it. And then eventually, I like to describe my work as like the Taco Bell effect, where it's like you have 5 items, but you can make like 30 different things out of it. So it's like my art, I just started selling it in person, in prints, and then slowly online into just, you know, into anything, a bag, a shirt, while also donating to causes that matter to me. And eventually after that, I just started placing myself in nonprofits and with organizers and just building that network and just showing them what skills I'm capable of and how I can, you know, help them develop campaigns and strategies and visuals and images that can speak to the community they're trying to reach, who keeps closing the door on them. And from there, I got into residencies, and people just slowly started discovering my work and hiring me across the country, where it's like, we appreciate what you're doing because we don't see other people doing it. And it's like you have a message that brings positivity and a sense of unity. So for me, I got lucky because now people are finding, you know, appreciation within these visuals and branding and just responsible design on how you connect with the community, because you have to think about how they're being represented. What colors are you showing? Are you reflecting, you know, the diversity that you see within people, especially immigrants, because we're not all just Latinos, we're from everywhere. And speaking of which, from that, after starting doing these residencies and building campaigns, I started discovering my sense of worth. And that's where you kind of learn, it's like, okay, you know what, I can make money doing this. My time is valuable, my skills are valuable, so why can't I get paid? Just building that network and building friendships within these organizations everywhere. I met my business partner, who's also a Nigerian immigrant, who was working in politics. I mean, he worked as a web developer, and he was just looking for another way to give back without, you know, drowning his soul within technology. And while I did design, it's like, well, if we're meeting in the perfect intersection, why don't we come together and, you know, show how, you know, these campaigns, politicians, small businesses, or nonprofits can use technology and digital platforms and websites to communicate their message, especially now with the pandemic. Everybody's having to, you know, find new ways to communicate. And it's like, how do we still get people to take action and donate and volunteer without, you know, having to meet in person? So now just taking what I did visually through illustrations and posters and taking it into web design and so forth, we're starting to build these communities. And even in there, there's money with the nonprofits. You just have to be able to ask for it and know your sense of worth. And there's always going to be there's always going to be some people who are going to see how much they can drain out of you before they have to pay you. And that's just something also you have to learn your boundaries and say no. It's like, I have a sense of worth. I know what works, and I know how to get your organization off the ground where you need it to be. And let's be honest, many of these organizations have a lot of money. You just need to know how to ask for it.
Yeah, that's very true. Constanza?
Yeah, agreed. And I think a lot of times you can even get involved in like trying to apply for a grant together so that, you know, if they don't have the money, you can at least like help them figure out how to get it. I've done that with a few clients, especially when you care about something, you know, like, because not all nonprofits do good work. Like being a nonprofit does not imply great work or doing good in any way. But you know, a lot of them think they do, and they can just, and it's like clear, it's like everything, you know, it comes down to respect and, you know, on people's time. And if you think that, you know, if you don't respect people, if you don't respect people's words, and you don't respect like people's skills, that's going to come through in other ways. Like I've learned that with experience too, you know, like when I'm like, you know what, this is a good cause, I'm going to do it. And then it's a nightmare because if people don't value what you bring to the table, then they're going to treat you that way. And it's like never a good formula. So, so yeah, I like, because I work on my own now, I have a lot of control of how I bring the two together. I do a lot of work with organizations that I like, that I'm involved with in other ways. And I try to always, you know, because especially when with branding work, there's so much, it's so deep that it's hard these days to do something that I don't connect to. And I know that's a huge privilege, but that's kind of like what I've set myself up to do. And then I also started doing visual note taking, which is like live drawing at conferences, and it's like literally like visual notes. So I do that as a performance, and what's really cool about that is that it's an opportunity to also learn about things. So I've done a lot of learning about like whole industries, and then like started working with them in other ways because I've just become very well versed in what they do. So for a while I did a lot of work around educational equity, then I did a bunch of work around health equity. I feel like, well, you know, always I'm part of the Connecticut Bail Fund, so I do work with the National Bail Fund Network, and you know, a lot of work relating to abolishing ICE and closing detention centers and prisons. But it's like the opportunity to learn and do the work, you know, instead of having to pick one or the other, is really great. I'm very excited that it's working. And every year I'm just like, maybe this year it won't work, and then it works. I'm like, maybe this year I need to get another job, and then it works. So we'll see. I've been in business, I think, 4 years.
I'm so glad to hear Michael has shared on the chat the visual notes in action and your Instagram account. That's very cool. So because we have some questions in the Q&A, I want to ask the final question that I had prepared. I still have a few more, but so my final question for you guys is, as an activist, you are an agent of social change. If you will have a toolbox for activism in your profession, what will we find in there?
That's a hard question. I have no idea. I always feel like my brain is just everywhere, and I'm just always trying to connect puzzles and pieces and how to connect community and communication. My literal toolbox is my laptop and my sketchbook. That's all I ever have. Right now, I would say the closest thing to a toolbox is like, right, I'm finishing my thesis and I'm discussing or writing about 287G, which is the agreement between ICE and, well, basically the Police and ICE collaboration, creating that automatic deportation line when arresting certain people. And that's just basically a set of images that you can take anywhere and just kind of create your own little gallery. And it's bilingual, so that way people are able to digest this information of how that works in their communities and what are the negative effects, and just being able to share their stories as well, of like what have their experiences have been with the police or their own immigrant stories, just to be able to humanize that topic more.
That's cool. The toolbox doesn't have to be an actual tangible thing. You know?
Yeah, I was gonna say my ears and my heart and my eyes, I guess.
Your hand for when you do all your stuff, right?
I guess I need my hands too. I guess I need my whole body. But yeah, I feel like that's the key, you know, like being able to listen with the heart, and you know, and like not being afraid of bringing my whole self to things, I think is what makes a difference.
You, Zaid?
So I would definitely take some of those things. So I would say my phone, because you have to stay connected, especially when you're going to protest. And then, you know, bring everything that you need. Depending on the protest, bring everything that you need. Get a fanny pack or a backpack, because that's always going to be key to carrying your stuff. A translator would be amazing. I just saw one, and you know, for those languages that you're talking about, translator on your phone would be awesome. And I've seen some that are coming out. Besides that, headphones, iPad, or a pen and paper to write notes with, because I always lose things. The phone is great when you're going into like federal offices and you're talking to senators or representatives, and to have like your phone tucked in your shirt, like a pocket shirt is amazing. We did that to catch everybody and record them. Even though we were told to not record, you can record people, and then you can hold it against them for whatever they say. So I would say that, you know, make sure you work on your bladder movements, and a megaphone would be great for me. That way I don't lose my voice. But I mean, what we have is technology. So, you know, use it all. Use whatever means of technology that you can, because right now it's free. So.
Awesome, that's fantastic. Well, we have some questions from the audience, and I want to make sure that we get time to cover them. So let's see. This is kind of related to my question. It says, which tools and or metrics do you measure the impact of your activism? Do you use to measure the impact of your activism?
Well, the lines are blurred a little bit, but you know, like sometimes like the metrics are on the client. Like if we're going to talk about strictly design work, you know, it's like they need to have like a whole team of people, like usually consultants, to do like evaluation work and metrics. And you know, if you're going to be real serious about the impact, I think like on when like with those smaller organizations, it's like the, you know, the outcomes. Like if you're working on a campaign and you win, like that's the outcome, that's the impact, you know. Or if you get like a few legislators to sign on, like even if you don't, if it's not like a big campaign win, if it's like moving forward, I think it's always like a collaboration with other people too, because different people come with different skills, you know. So in the same way that like all 3 or 4 of us like come to activism work with the skills that we've been talking about, we have other people come through with, you know, like political analysis and strategy and things like that, that like really help to break down like the power mapping of, you know, a certain situation or a landscape where you can kind of track the wins, even if it's not like a big visible win.
What about the rest? Do you have any way of measuring your impact, Zaid?
I mean, we did win at the Supreme Court, so that's like that's another, like that's how we measured it. That was an emotional week. But no, I think yeah, I'm only a one-person show, so I would say I can't measure it, and for me there's not a lot of purpose. All I can do is talk to people, hope that they listen, and they hope that they get on board with doing good things. I'm not pushing, you know, like I'm not pushing anything negative into this world. I'm not telling everybody to, you know, shop at my restaurant and therefore all of a sudden like things will be all right. No, it's like do work, you know, do good, stand up for the little guys, for the little people, for everybody who is suffering and has unjust. Unfortunately, yeah, I don't think I can measure that one.
Yeah.
Well, you have a way to measure it when you share something in social media, perhaps, and then you get reaction from the people in a way, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. At least you know they are hearing you.
Yeah.
Jocelyne, go ahead, sorry.
I don't think I really have a way to measure things either. It's just kind of like, as long as I can get some people to start a conversation and talk, or just listen and hear what others have to say in their stories, you know, that's successful to me. and just collaborating with others or organizations. You know, they keep track of numbers, and it's like, that's great. And I'm just happy to be there and be able to create something and give a tool that others can use.
Well, I have a question. There's several questions that are kind of related. So, do you feel you have to work exponentially harder to get recognition for your work?
Yes. Definitely do. If you follow me on Instagram, you would know I work every day. It's not even cute. I work all the time, but I love working. It's great for me. And I love being able to connect with people and talk and, you know, hear what they have to say. I think one of the greatest things that happened this year is that one of my posters, if you've seen it, it's Afro-Latina with butterflies in her hair with the message, "My dreams are not illegal." That one is going to be featured in the new Latino Center for the Smithsonian.
Ooh.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
Woohoo.
amazing.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So that's the way to measure your impact too.
Yeah, I was like, oh, like, this is great. You know, this year has been horrible, but that's some great news.
Yeah, I don't know about recognition, like what that even means. Like I said, for me, it's just like making a living, you know, like I don't need recognition. I know, like, I'm not even trying to like sound any way, but like, I just truly, it's not a priority. I think when I was younger, like I had some like dreams of like having some sort of like visibility, but now, you know, like I just feel so privileged to be able to do this work. And if I can pay my bills and like cover my basic needs, that's pretty much all I need.
I think that's true success right there.
Yeah.
What is the most important part of your creative process when designing to promote social change? This is from Sebastian Maldonado.
I'll answer first. I would say having empathy and not rushing in with a solution that you're going to throw on people. You have to walk in and learn and hear what others have to say instead of putting your own assumptions of what creates social change, because it's not a one-person thing.
That's such a good point, because I was going to say, yeah, that's it. I think like not relying on only what moves you. So like similar, you know, like that empathy piece, it's like just like listening is another way of thinking about it, you know, like listening and paying attention to what matters to people, so that you can connect with more people, or not just people who are like you, but, you know, just a broader audience and in different sectors.
Yeah, I would agree too. Listening, having empathy, and then the other like thing that I thought was just like writing down what or how I'm going to go into this conversation, depending on, you know, who I'm talking to. That's been the biggest one for me. You know, having that empathy. It's hard, but coming from a bottom, it's real simple to get down to the ground, for sure.
Oh, all right. So another question. What advice would you give to a designer who wants to use their powers for good? Where should they start?
Now.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, if you wait for other people to like show you, you're never going to move. And it's like organizing and working in activism or being an activist yourself. You have to put yourself in that place, and you have to motivate yourself, because nobody's going to hold your hand through it.
Constanza, you're muted.
Yeah, I know. Like Zaid said, it's not glamorous, you know, so like be ready to work. It's like, you know, it's like, because on one end you're getting to do something that you really care about and make a difference, hopefully, but also it's just a lot of tedious work, you know, like usually when you're not in it, you see like a little bit, and then like you know, everything that has to do with like organizing actions, like organizing public campaigns, like it's a lot of work and a lot of like spreadsheets and stuff that is not fun.
Yeah, and like
Um,
Zaid mentioned earlier, it's a lot of emotional labor, just having to put yourself there and tell your own story again and again and again.
Yeah.
So be prepared for that, right?
Yeah. The only thing I would add to that would be like for someone like me who's an introvert, you know, find a group, find a rally, find whatever it might be that you're interested in or that you believe in. Do your homework as well. Because I've actually gone to some rallies here in this COVID era, and there's a couple of them that I was like, oh my God, what did I come? Like, who is doing this? No one knew who like the person in charge was. And I was like, what? I've never been into like this organized rallies. I've always been with like very organized rallies. So make sure you do a little bit of homework too, and that organization knows what they're doing.
That's great. So it involves everything, you know, organization, brain, emotion, body. This is from a friend of us, Mark O'Brien, Constanza. He's asking, he's a design educator. So how can design educators encourage students to consider bridging their creative work with activist work?
For one, it's a good portfolio piece. It's a way to start a network and find a sense of community and being able to just experiment, because in the corporate life, for one, there's no room for experimentation, at least within, you know, trying to work within activist work or social good. People are more open to hear your ideas and see what works and see how we can connect with people, because that's always the goal. It's like, okay, let's see how we can reinvent ourselves each time, because yeah, we go to protests, but eventually those start to blur. Like, come on, this whole year, there's been so many. And it's like, what one can stand out? And so it's like, well, let's think about the image. What image stayed with you this year?
I think I've done a little bit of teaching, and what I always tell, you know, young designers is that it's your chance to bring your heart into it in a real way. You know, like you don't get a lot of chances to do that in like non-activist work that, or like not personal projects, you know. And I think like we're always like trying to stretch that. Like I did a lot of design work before I had my own business that wasn't necessarily, you know, related to activism. And you like make it have meaning, you know, like you just like push the meaning into it. But like when it comes to design and activism, you don't have to do that forcing, like it's just there. That's what it is about. So like, I think it's a great opportunity, and everybody has something that they care about, you know, or they should if they're human. If not, they should do some introspection.
What do you think, Zaid, from the perspective of a creative, how to bridge that?
Well, especially from a professor point of view, I'm not in the design world anymore necessarily. I do a ton of different design stuff, but I'm not in it. I would say, yeah, push that boundary. Like actually, you know, if you can make a project that people have to do, or if you're the person who's trying to do it, do something that will push that envelope of what you believe in, instead of just, you know, random logos or companies to get that money, because the money is essential. Like we know this, you have to make money somewhere or another, but there's got to be also we have to care a little bit more about what's happening to other people. So push yourself to do it now.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that. This is just like a little bit of a tidbit, but for me, I've been teaching for 14 years, and pretty much all my projects have to do with social or environmental issues. And I started, and at the beginning there was some pushback from students. They didn't care about sustainability. I was like, why we have to do everything about sustainability? And it's like, well, because, you know, without a planet, we won't be alive. So, you know, it was a challenge at the beginning, and then social issues and, you know, modern day slavery, things that that resonate nowadays with the new generation too, because, you know, this idea of being an engaged citizen. So things have changed for higher ed, for education, and it's nice to see at the younger level, you know, K-12, even, you know, K-6, that kids are empowered to do change with their knowledge. That when they learn about something that's happening with the oceans or with the planet, the younger, very young generations are really deeply caring. So it's very inspiring to me as an educator. So here's another question. This is more specific. Could you all share with us a piece of activist art or design that you're most proud of, and what's the story behind it?
Well, I guess like I mentioned earlier, that the image of the Afro-Latina has been the one that started a lot of things for me. She gave me a voice within the community and recognition that, you know, art can speak to these issues and social change. I didn't realize how far she would get me even now, because people don't always know that I'm the creator of it, but it's amazing to see how she's spread everywhere nationally. I always see pictures and see how that picture just continues to speak for, you know, the dreamer community and immigration reform and all these issues. But yeah, oh, and how the story behind that. I drew that the day they announced DACA was about to expire. And for me, like, illustrating is my therapy. Like, that's the only way I can connect myself with home and stories and people. And I just drew that in the moment and I uploaded it, and somehow the Women's March discovered it and it just kind of spread everywhere.
Constanza, Zaid?
Yeah, I have no idea. I'm having a really hard time. I think a lot of actually, I just did a really cool thing with one of my all-time heroes who runs this organization in New York called Project Nia. Her name is Mariam Kaba, and she's like an amazing abolitionist who's just an amazing person. Just look her up, like get the link on the chat and all that. But I don't even know how it happened. Like on Twitter, someone gave her my name or something, and she reached out for me to do visual notes on a panel she did. And it was amazing. It was just so meaningful to even like get emails from her. I was just like, what's going on in my life? And then just doing the work felt so good, and I'm so proud of it. And I love sharing it. The content is great too. So, but that also led me to some really interesting work and clients that are still coming through because of her featuring me on her social media.
That's very cool.
So I would say the piece that was written by Bon Appetit, that was huge. It took me by surprise. One, like, yeah, I don't do this for the fame because I don't even get paid for it. If I was getting paid for it, then sure, I would do it for the fame, and I would, you know, run it as much and squeeze it as much as I could. But I don't do it for the fame or the money, since I'm not getting that. But the Bon Appetit was so big because it was online. It wasn't printed, but it was on their email, and they blasted it to all their subscribers, which is not only national, but it's international. And we dove about like a week or two into the story. And the writer was such a great person, and he definitely like had the time and spent it on, you know, really good facts and story, instead of just giving me a call for an hour and then just getting snippets of my life and putting it out there and just being like, here's this guy who randomly is a chef. But the fact that, like, I just started coming out to the scene, to the culinary scene and to the chef world, again, it's not something I chose. It's something that I had to do because I found a gift in it. So therefore I had to make money, and now I'm here. But that opened the door for so many things. This year has been a whirlwind of emotions and things happening, but we were also able to get like Chef of the Year here in Kansas City. So that was another nice thing that like put it up there. And I want to let people know, if you ever get to that article, read it. You know, it was my life. I poured my heart out for 2 weeks with this interviewer, and we made it happen. So it's got a lot of value. And like I said, just think of all the people that are being affected by this, and put their face in it, and change your mindset about it, change the people's mindset about it. You know, just grow that, plant that seed that we are not criminals, we are not rapists, that we are hardworking, that we bring so much money to this economy, that we hire, you know, for the longest time before we shut down, I think we had 12 employees, and all of them were American citizens. So I was the only undocumented person within that whole restaurant. But yeah, that is I think that's what like rocketed us to a lot broader audience, is that article from Bon Appetit.
That's great. Yeah, I read the article, and actually it has been shared on the chat, so people can like look at it. So I'm concluding like the panel questions, and I'm going to pass it on to Edwin, but I just want to thank you for your time, for opening up and sharing your personal stories, and, you know, like very intimate stories of survival, struggle, the challenges that we all, you know, have to overcome being immigrants, wherever we come from and wherever we are. Someone in the chat, who's also a friend of mine, says that we are all one, we live in one planet. And I think that that's one of the keys of this panel, is just to bring your ideas together from multiple disciplines and to share it with our audience. And I thank you very much for having the time to, you know, in all these like sacrifices, having the time to share this with us.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you guys all again. Thank you to all of our attendees, and especially to all of our panelists for donating their time for this. Hope you guys all had a great one. We do have a survey that we are doing to try to get some feedback. We'd like to know more about your experience with Hispanic Heritage Talks, and also some feedback to know like what more do you guys want to hear and what we can do to make these even more engaging. So thank you all for joining us, and have a great evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Stay safe.